Derek Carr. He had an issue with his shoulder. We're hoping to get a solution on that in the near future. And when we do, I'll report back to you. Otherwise, I don't have anything more to state about Derek. Open to any pre-draft questions that you might have.
Mickey, would you say the news broke about Derek that you were surprised by it, or was this something you guys knew about before?
Yeah, I'm just not going to answer any more questions about Derek. I mean, this is a pre-draft. If you have questions about the draft, then I'm more than happy to answer those. But in terms of the roster and Derek, I'm not going to answer any more questions about that today.
The uncertainty about the health of your starting quarterback, who seemingly came out in the blue, that affects your draft. That's the biggest draft topic.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to answer any questions about Derek at this time.
Trying to phrase it without asking about Derek. How does the draft approach? What is the draft approach, knowing what you know?
Yeah, I don't think the draft approach for us is any different than it would be in any year. You know, we're looking for as many good players, great players as we can find. And look, we're fortunate enough this year to have, multiple picks in the first 4 rounds, and we're excited about that because I think there's some depth in this draft that we'll be able to help our roster.
Derek aside, how do you feel about the participation in the offseason program in general to this point?
Yeah, I feel really good about it and excited about the staff, the new staff, excited about some of the things that we're doing that are different. And I feel like from the player standpoint, I just feel a level of excitement and enthusiasm that gives me a lot of positive feeling.
Mickey, I have to try one. We all heard publicly about the Derek Carr shoulder issue a couple weeks ago. Is that something you knew about well before that?
Yeah. Again, this is a pre-draft press conference. I'm not going to answer any questions like that. We got a lot of time between now and the season.
And can I ask just a general procedural question that doesn't have a name with that? When we have restructured contracts, that comes with a new signing bonus. Do those signing bonuses come with passing a physical or showing up on a certain?
Yeah, it depends. They don't have to necessarily come with restructures. Can come in all sorts of forms. So, yeah.
Could you outline your draft philosophy again as it relates to new versus best player?
Yeah. For the 50th time now? I guess I haven't been here 50 times. Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, I think you're looking for quality players. So we're always looking for the best player we can get at wherever we're drafting. More often than not, when you're on the clock, you've got 2 or 3 players that are all graded roughly the same, and then you go to which of these positions fits us, at that time in terms of your roster need. More often than not, every once in a while, there's just a guy out there that's so far graded above everyone else. Well, you at least got to take this guy. That's happened to us. It happened to us when Deuce McAllister was drafted. We had Ricky Williams. We had a really good running back, and yet his grade was just so much greater than anyone else's on the board. We took him, best available player. That happened with Will Smith, as I recall, when we took Will Smith. So more often, though, you've got 2 or 3 guys in a cloud. They're all graded roughly the same. You have the same opinion about them, and then you're just sorting out by position at that point.
You see pitfalls potentially of getting fixated on season needs?
Yes, I do. And I'm not saying that we haven't ever done that before, but that's, I think, generally when sometimes those turn out. Maybe you overdraft someone higher than what you've got them graded, but it turns out. But I think that a lot of times when you make mistakes, it's because the value didn't match where you were drafting.
On specific to any specific position, like when someone retires that maybe you weren't expecting, or they get hurt training, like something happens, the player goes, does that change your thinking that now we have to go get this position because this guy fell out, or you just still the same way you would? Yeah,
I mean, it could. I don't. Yeah, I'm not saying that necessarily, I can't think of a specific example, but yeah, I mean, you're always paying attention to your roster and who, if we had to play a game tomorrow, who are we lining up? So you always pay attention to that, but you also recognize we're not playing a game tomorrow. We've got time. Then there's other avenues to fill needs. There's free agency, there's the draft, there's trades, there's, guys are going to get released during training camp. And so there's going to be other opportunities.
Mickey, how important is it for the number 9 pick that this individual contributes and starts from the get-go, kind of like with Swaka versus trying to develop them like with Davenport and Peyton Turner?
Yeah.
And how a lot of upside, but then boom or bust kind of thing, the perception, the fans look at.
Yeah.
But picking a guy that, he's going to contribute for the 2025 season.
Yeah, well, I think that varies from team to team. You may take somebody that's more developmental if you think the upside's really huge. I think for us, if we're picking in the top 10, we're looking for somebody that, man, we're going to count on this guy for the next 8 to 10 years, and he's going to fill that spot, and we're not going to have to worry about it. That for me, that's a goal, and that sometimes that might be a home run, a perennial Pro Bowl player, but sometimes it might be a guy that just, man, we can sleep at night because we got that position covered for the next, 8 to 10 years.
Given the current situation, when it comes to trading up and trading back, new coaching staff and all that, would you say maybe the philosophy could be a little different this year when it comes to not giving up draft picks to trade up, or do you go in with the same philosophy no matter what?
Well, look, I know my record says something different. I've never been against trading back. It just appears that way. I think when you have a new coaching staff, obviously we're getting to know each other. We're getting to know each other's philosophies. Kellen and I have talked a lot about draft philosophy, about, what he wants to get accomplished in year one, where we're at, all those things. So it comes into play, yes. But I think, how I feel about things and philosophy hasn't changed, and how he feels and his philosophy hasn't changed either. We're just trying to communicate that and make sure we're on the same page and aligned, which I think we are. It's been a fantastic experience so far. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's where we're at.
I was going to ask about when you trade up, right? As you've done a lot, you have traded up. You try to be in control, right? You
Yeah.
feel good. You're going to get your guy.
Yeah.
You trade back. There's trepidation. You feel pretty good. I was just kind of wondering, is that true? One and two. Did you or for a mentor ever get kind of burned, like you traded back, like you had a guy, and you got kind of.
I don't recall ever being burned by that. Here we go. I would say this in general. When I look at it, I believe in our evaluation process. I believe in our grades. And so just philosophically, it's hard for me to say, I want to trade back and get a lesser player than I can get from moving forward. So if you move forward, you're guaranteeing yourself in my mind, a better player based upon our grades. Now we got to be right? As opposed to going back and I might end up with a lesser player. So just, and I get that you're getting more swings, right? When you trade back, you're picking up assets and you're getting more swings. So I understand that philosophy. I don't disagree with it. They can all work. Sometimes you might feel like I can trade back and still get the guy that I was going to take. That's when it really makes a lot of sense, right? When you feel like you can move back some spots and still get the guy or one of the guys that you really wanted.
Are the grades set? And this would be typical.
And look, it's not like there's some dramatic change, but there's a lot of, this guy's ahead of this guy's back, grades are all in the same area. Which guy do we really prefer over the other guy? And that's when, position may come into play.
Mickey, when you talk about guys you may prefer, and obviously the defensive philosophy changes with coaches, how much impact, do you feel like with Coach Staley? Okay, what kind of type of defensive player would you like versus Dennis Allen and those teams?
A lot. And look, the structure of our defense is changing. And so there's been a lot of conversations about that, really since the day they walked into the building, including not just with me and Jeff, Parrington, but with all of our staff and all the people involved, personnel. We have to, in order to do a of evaluating for our team, we have to understand what they're asking our players to do. And so it is different. You know, the types of guys and what they're asking you to do is different.
But would that be a situation like with Zach Vaughn? I mean, here's outstanding on special teams. And you really get opportunities, you put him in the right place,
Yeah.
and then he goes to the Eagles.
Yeah.
He's up for like defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
Maybe
That's painful.
From a roster standpoint, do you feel like this roster, your roster now, could use more help, more depth help,
Yeah.
or across the board help?
Sure.
Than maybe in some previous years?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think every GM in our league, including Philadelphia, who just won the Super Bowl, they all feel like, we got to help our roster. We got to get better here. You know, we all feel that way.
I mean, do you feel differently, or do you feel differently about your roster this year maybe than you did 2
Yeah.
years ago or 3 years ago, that kind of thing?
I don't know. I'd have to really put a lot of time and thought into that. I mean, because every year I feel like, man, we got to get better in this area. We got to get better in that area. I mean, the areas are different, from year to year, but I'm always feeling like, we haven't got enough. We haven't got enough. Yeah.
Is there a sense of urgency maybe, since you got here, you talk about us mining your history, so to say.
Yeah.
I know when you first got here, you were with Randy, and
Yep.
you all signed Jeff Blake, and you traded for Aaron Brooks, and then when Sean got here, you immediately got Drew Brees, and then when Dennis took over, you chased Sean Watson, and then you got Derek
Yeah.
Carr. Is there any type of urgency to get Kellen his guy?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always urgency about, I mean, it's just not that, I mean, you're citing that position, but there's urgency about that at every position. Is want to make sure we're getting players that the coaches want, that believe they can win with, regardless of whether they're here or not. We're always looking to provide them with the resources they need to be successful.
You mentioned the draft grades. What, based on, I know you said you still may have a couple more tweaks to, when it comes to the draft grades and all that good stuff. What position groups have really kind of stuck out to you based on draft grades heading into, this weekend?
Stuck out in terms of what?
Just like, at what positions do you think this draft is like the deepest?
Yeah. I don't know if I want to say that. Yeah. I feel like that there's more defensive linemen than most years, that we have great. And look, we got the same numbers, right, every year. But in terms of, top 2 or 3 rounds, I feel like, and I don't know this guy, I haven't counted, but I feel like there's more defensive linemen than most years. And I feel like there's fewer corners, for example, than most years. But I haven't really quantified that. And so it's hard for me to answer that question. I just did, but I'm not that confident in the answer.
What did you say about the quarterback class this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's guys that are good quarterbacks, really good quarterbacks, and I don't know if the quantity is the same as some other years, but that goes up and down, and look, one thing about that position, I think that you fall in love with somebody, and I think each of our teams, sometimes that's a different guy.
Mickey, going back to like 15 with Derek Grayson and just going forward,
Yeah.
what is your guys' philosophy in terms of like urgency and resource spending on just finding that young quarterback prospect and maybe getting them into the building? Is it just something that maybe hasn't aligned where you wanted it to in that respect? Or like, how do you guys look at that?
Yeah, well, I think, look, one thing is different when, in the middle of Drew Brees era, right? So there wasn't a lot of urgency about that, but you're always wanting to take swings and develop, the position. That's good business. I think the thing that you have to really resist is overdrafting and taking someone that way sooner, because that's opportunity cost, right? If we take somebody way sooner than maybe we should have. We're taking a swing. If it doesn't work out, we missed out on whatever player who ended up being the Pro Bowl or, whatever it is. So it's hard to resist though. It's hard to do that sometimes.
What about in positions where there's like higher positional value and scarcity?
Yeah.
Play, and is that going to be even harder not to just like take a swing and like maybe reach?
Yeah, I think that, what we perceive as high position value affects how we grade them, for example. And certainly affects whether we take somebody, particularly when you have them all graded in the same area, right? Even if you're strong at that position.
Has taking quarterbacks in back-to-back drafts either changed the way you look at the position or what you look for, and how it's kind of the experience of the last 2 years informed maybe if you are looking at quarterbacks?
Yeah, I don't think that's changed anything. I mean, we like both those guys as prospects, and we like them. So I think that's, again, I think all teams are in the business of quarterbacks.
And what is overdrafting at the quarterback position? If you have the 9th pick, and you take a quarterback here 20th, does it become overdrafting when they're ranked 40th? Like where's the
Yeah,
line
it's a
for-
good question. I don't know that I have a great answer for that. So,
What have you done up until now? Like where have you drawn the line on, is there more wiggle room in that position than that?
yeah, I think probably, yeah.
Is it because, I just looked back, I talked about your history, I think when you were in Seattle.
Yep.
No, but Dan McGuire and Rick Meyer in the first round while you were there, I know.
Yeah, I wasn't really involved in
I
that
know.
decision making, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
That's truly, in your biography, those are the only 2 that were in the first round.
Yep.
During any part of your
Yep.
management tenure. Is it just coincidence or by design because you feel like you have to be picking in the top 3 to get a guy or?
Good question. I don't know that I can answer that though. I mean, look, the guys you fall in love with at that position, you feel like are immediate players they're going to be taken in the top, 7 or 8, 10 picks, right? That's just the nature of it. That doesn't mean that you can't find a really good quarterback later. Just more often later, it's more speculative and there's more development that's required. So, I think that's what's the difference between taking someone in the top 5 or 6 versus taking someone later in the draft.
Does it have to be long or could it be like really light? Or
Yeah, good question.
I'd like to
Depends on what you're drafting.
You know, like-
Depends on what you're drafting, right? I think if you're drafting up really high, you better love them.
I'm gonna try one more time.
What you guys want to do with the 9th pick, how much stock do you put into the information that comes out this week from around the league?
Like from the media, none. I don't want to say 0 because we see it, but yeah.
I'm going to try one more time because this is technically a follow-up to your opening statement. You said you.
Do you want me to say that I'm not going to answer that right now, or do you want me to wait after your
The
question?
option is up to you.
Okay.
You said you hope to have clarity on the Carr situation soon. Is that clarity as to his prognosis, or is that clarity on how this happened or how this was discovered?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing here. This is for a pre-draft press conference. It's not for those questions.
Mickey, I got a Senior Bowl question.
Yeah.
I know you get asked all the time. Jimmy Nagy said that was the best, most talented roster
Yeah.
that he put together. Tomorrow they're looking to get quite a few names that played in that game that was there throughout the course of the week.
Yeah.
To be drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
So when you saw the whole week there, walked away from the
Yep.
game, did you feel that way?
Yeah, I think there was a number of comments from our personnel staff that, man, there was a lot of really good players there for the week. Some of them didn't play in the game, but a lot of them were there at the beginning of the week, and then a lot of them played in the game. Yeah, I felt like last year was the talent of the Senior Bowl was really good as well, and man, I think there's a lot of players that really helped themselves by going not only to the Senior Bowl but the East-West game, and yeah, those are valuable exposures for players, and they're certainly valuable to us as evaluators.
What has it been like leaning on Kellen's expertise at the quarterback position?
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. We've got him. We've got Scott Tolzien, we've got Doug Nussmeier, all who played the position in the league, and yeah, it's been awesome.
Are you seeing big differences in what, I'm sorry, are you seeing big differences in what Kellen and Brandon Staley might want as opposed to what you were getting? I mean, look, you kind of had the same regime for a long time.
Yeah.
Are you seeing like fundamental differences in things they're looking for?
I don't think there's any real differences in terms of the intangible things, you know, the makeup of the players. I think there are some differences, particularly on defense in what we're looking for based upon a different structure of the defense. But look, we're all just looking for really good football players who love the game and they're smart and tough, and you know, all that's the same. But there are some nuance. I think it's more, instead of differences, I'd say it's more nuance than differences.
Mickey, you look at the impact now, whatever you from it, basically like the running back position.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you know, the same kind of contribution, Derek Henry, and that. Do you feel like teams like going forward? I guess it could be cyclical as far as like, okay,
Yeah.
running backs are hot or not.
Yep.
How important does that come about that you have one, you got 1-2 punches at Kamara's age?
Yeah.
So where he's at, and as far as, you know, when you take a running back early.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've always valued running backs. We understand, you know, what they provide in terms of winning. I think since I've been here, we've had a lot of really good running backs, you know, Ricky Williams and Deuce and Reggie and Mark and Alvin, and I'm probably leaving a couple out, but so I think we've always valued the position. I do think that, you know, what Philadelphia did with Saquon and elevated maybe the perception of that. I think that's helped running backs in general. He's a pretty special player. So yeah, I think it did. I think it did help the perception, you know, at least, you know, league wide or maybe even the public perception.
How does Spencer Rattler affect? I mean, if you're going to draft a quarterback, does it have to be somebody that you think could be above the Spencer Rattler?
Yeah, I mean, we're speculating here. Like I said, it's just, you know, we're in the business of developing quarterbacks. We like the guys we've got. That doesn't mean, you know, we're going to draft. How many draft picks we got? 9. We're going to draft 9 players. You know, they're going to be different positions. It doesn't mean that we don't like the guys at those positions that we have. It just means we're trying to add to the mix and create competition and make ourselves better. And so I don't think it's any different.
As far as the running game goes, do you have a philosophy on whether, like some people think you need to have the perfect offensive line before you put a premium asset in the back? Does it matter to you guys like which way it's built, or can one come before?
I don't know that I can answer that question really, but I do know this is that, you know, our philosophy and Kellen's philosophy is you build inside out, you know, offense, defensive line, you know, you got to put resources. That allows you to be a good football team. And so I think we're aligned in that regard.
Sorry, another philosophical kind of question here. I know that you're the longest tenured general manager in the league, I believe, and obviously your track record of success, and you're ingrained in this community. And without saying to fans, but do you have a message? Because obviously some of these answers are going to be a lightning rod for more fan frustration.
Yep.
Is there anything about being patient, or there's light at the end of the tunnel,
No.
or something that can give clarity on the situation we started with?
No, look, I can't listen. We're 5-12. You know, we got to own that. We're 5-12, regardless of why, and that falls on my shoulders. So I understand the frustration. That it just is what it is. That comes with the job, and I understand that. So I got big shoulders in that regard.
This is similar to what Doug was asking earlier, but when you look at your roster and you're trying to decide how many guys your term was like you can go to sleep at night, you know, we got that position covered. Does that factor into the trade down formula? Like, are you looking at this roster right now like we need to have more than 2 players in the first 2 days of the draft, or you don't feel that way?
Well, I don't know that I can answer that exactly right. I can say this though. Look, we've got a 1st-round pick, a 2nd-round pick, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. I feel really good about that because I think we'll get good players in all those spots. And that makes me feel good. You know, last time we had this many picks in the first 4 rounds, I think was 2017. And that was a pretty good draft. I hope we have the same issue, you know, with 4 years later, we're trying to keep these guys and we can't keep them all. I hope that's the issue, that they're all good players and then it becomes difficult to keep them all.
Mickey, when you say that the starting quarterback of the upcoming season is on the team right now, or that could be addressed through free agency or the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to answer that question because that'll just lead to a bunch of speculation, whichever way I answer it.
Take 2 or 3 more.
What do you think is I mean, you mentioned, positional need and also grades and whatnot. In your opinion, what do you think is the biggest positional need for this team entering the draft with so much draft capital?
Yeah. I'm not going to answer that because I get the question and there is an answer to it, but I'm not going to answer it because I don't want to give away which direction we might be leaning. Appreciate the question though. Now, listen, we study every player that's eligible for the draft, regardless of position. So that hasn't changed. You want evaluations of these guys because they might become free agents. They might fall down to you. You just never know. So I think we're pretty diligent on really every guy in the draft because remember, this process starts a year ago, 2 years ago. I mean, we don't even know when we're drafting it, when we're going through that early part of the process. So you have to evaluate every player.
Is Jason posted all game able to participate in anything?
Yeah, well, look, you got a serious, knee injury, so it's going to be a while.
Mickey, with the car situation on Seagull, you said you didn't want to say anything because the draft is going on, things like that. Would you be more willing when the draft is concluded to provide clarity, or is that?
Yeah, I think when I have more information, we'll go with that. So, which is
Prior, I think the deadline May 2nd, there's been a decision made on the 5th-year option guys, or could that be contingent on the class?
actually, I'll give you that. Here's the carrot. Where's Matt? Here's the carrot, Matt. So we are going to exercise the option on Chris, and we're not going to exercise the option on Trevor. But that doesn't mean we don't love Trevor and expect him to be part of our team going forward. Is that enough of a carrot?
That's pretty good.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I made somebody happy. I like it. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.